CNBC Africa caught up with Susan Mboya-Kidero, president of the Coca-Cola Africa Foundation, at the WEF conference to discuss how forging growth can help create jobs in Africa. Let's take a look.
For us to achieve that, it's going to be a united effort. It is going to require the input of governments. It's going to require the input of corporates and the NGO sector. At Coke, we have a model that we call inclusive business. We believe our company cannot grow if the communities that we're in are not growing. And so we want to grow our business in ways that actually benefit the community. An example of that is our 5x20 initiative, our Women's Economic Empowerment Initiative, where Coca-Cola has made a commitment to empower 5 million women by the year 2020 through our value chain. And so we're working with a number of partners to provide access to assets, to provide access to financing, and to provide access to business skills training for women so that they can make an income.
We'll come back to that point on women. Let's talk about access to water on the African continent, particularly in rural areas. I mean, looking at the statistics that we get out from the United Nations, they're not too encouraging. So what is your take on what African governments are doing and their level of commitment to ensuring that every African has access to potable water, and of course what Coca-Cola is doing too?
Yeah, I think governments are making an effort. Government projects require huge infrastructure, and putting infrastructure in place takes time. What Coca-Cola is doing is looking to help plug those gaps, if you will. We have a program that we call RAIN, the Replenish Africa Initiative. It has 3 components. One is to provide access to water, safe water and sanitation for 2 million Africans by the year 2015. We're also looking to preserve and replenish the clean water sources or water sources in Africa, and then also to provide hygiene education across. And right now we're in over 40 countries. And looking to go across Africa with this initiative.
I want to come back to that point of the government. Yes, we know infrastructure is a challenge, but also, there needs to be that political will.
Yes.
And there has to be, you need to get your priorities right. For you, do you see them tackling the issue of potable water, access to clean water, a priority?
I think it's difficult to talk about Africa in one, as one homogeneous place. There are places where we're doing better. Places where we're not doing as well. I think every government recognizes what we recognize at Coca-Cola, which is that water is the very basis of healthy communities, and without healthy communities, we can't grow, Africa can't grow.
Okay, let's talk about youth empowerment also. Part of the theme is creating jobs, and we know that that has been a problem for African leaders. We see many governments in the forefront of this, trying to create the jobs themselves. A good example is Nigeria. But of course, we know that, at least analysts tell us that it's the private sector that will do that. But for you, in terms of as we create these jobs, are we creating jobs? Are we creating value? Are we putting innovation? Are we including innovation? What is your perspective?
First of all, I think empowering youth is critical for Africa, just given that a lot of the youth bulge resides here. And I think it is going to be to some degree up to government. It is going to be up to corporates to find innovative ways to absorb many of the youth who are coming out of schools. So it's not going to be the traditional office jobs necessarily, but we have to look across our entire value chain and say, where can we create specific jobs for the youth? Where can we create opportunities for them to get experience that will help them to get jobs in the future? And third is, how can we help them to develop entrepreneurial skills? And that's a key focus for us on the Coca-Cola Africa Foundation.
Now, talking about developing entrepreneurial skills, online startups or startups generally, that's a trend that's gaining momentum now on the African continent. So many youngsters are now, thankfully, thinking outside of the box, and we've seen so many great ideas and innovations. But then, of course, the issue of who's going to fund these startups, that comes to the fore. What is your perspective?
Again, I think corporates and government have to play a part. It's encouraging to see that some governments are actually setting aside funding to help fund these startups. In Kenya, for example, there is the Uwezo Fund, which is created by the government specifically to lend to youth, to enable them to get jobs. As well, some governments are setting aside or holding a certain percentage of their spending is to be allocated only to youth-driven projects. And I know that in Kenya, again, about 30% of government spending from a tenders standpoint has to go towards women and youth. And I think those are the sorts of commitments that will help to make that change.